Story time. My boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. It was my junior year in high school and my boyfriend and I had been dating for 4 months. Well, the one night him, his friend, and I were all supposed to go to this party. My boyfriend ended up getting called into work that night, so his friend and I went. Which my boyfriend was fine with because he wanted his best friend to keep an eye on me, but he also trusted us. Anyway, so his friend and I ended up going to the party and then but the next morning I woke up, I didn't remember that at all. So fast forward, I find out that I'm pregnant. Well, me forgetting that I totally cheated on my boyfriend, I thought that it was his. Well, a week later, I get a text from his friend. And he's like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what are we gonna do? So then he filled me in on the whole situation that I didn't remember. But I was like, there's really no chance of this because my boyfriend and I fucked like a million times and me and you fucked once. The real tea is that my boyfriend was black and his friend was white. Well, me being the ass bitch that I am, I was like, well, let's just wait it out. I bet it's not his. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. So like I said, my boyfriend was black, his best friend was white, and because I doubted that it was his best friend's kid, I decided to wait it out. Say it with me, bad idea. So fast forward, I'm in the delivery room and I decide not to have my boyfriend in there. Well, let's just say good thing that he did. Bitch, whenever this thing popped out, it was white as fucking paper. So I was like to the doctor, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have a panic attack. Please get the baby out of the room. I don't want anybody around the baby right now. So when my boyfriend came back in the room, I was like, oh, we can't see the baby. He's having some issues. He's over here freaking out. I'm having a fucking panic attack about what I'm gonna do. And they brought my kid back and I was like, that's not my kid. And this girl looked so confused. She was like, oh, okay. And my boyfriend and I are laughing. We're like, oh, haha, that's funny. Then she comes back into the room and she's like, ma'am, this is your kid. So my boyfriend started screaming and he broke up with me after that. Like, how rude to just leave me with a kid by myself. No, I'm just joking. I know that was pretty fucked.
I'm going to be telling you the scary story of the exorcism of Roland Doe. It all started when Roland and his grandmother would hear scratching coming from the floorboards of the grandmother's room. They called an exterminator the next morning and they couldn't find anything that was causing the scratching. The weird part about the scratching is it would start every single night at exactly 7 p.m. and end at exactly midnight. The noise eventually moved from the grandmother's room to Roland's room. Roland started to hear someone every single night walk from one side of his bedroom to the next. Roland's mom was convinced that this might be their Aunt Helen. Helen had recently passed away and was really close to Roland. It made perfect sense if she was the spirit of the house. Later we would learn that Roland would always use an Ouija board in order to get in contact with his Aunt Helen. One night, Roland's mom asked the spirit that was walking back and forth in Roland's room if it was Helen. She told the spirit to knock 3 times if it was Helen. 3 massive gusts of wind went over them and knocked 3 times behind their heads. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the exorcism of Roland Doe. One night when the spirit was walking back and forth in Roland's room, the mom decided to ask if it was their Aunt Helen. She asked the spirit to knock 3 times if it was Helen. 3 massive gusts of wind went over their heads and knocked 3 times on the wall behind them. She then asked the spirit to knock 4 times if it was Helen. Again, 4 gusts of wind went over their heads and knocked 4 times on the wall behind them. The family was convinced the spirit was just Helen, until something started to scratch inside of Roland's mattress. They could physically feel something inside the mattress. And all of a sudden, just like that, the mattress started to shake and shake and shake. Vases started to fly across the room. One day, Roland was sitting in an armchair and it literally flew up into the air, threw him out of the chair, and flew backwards. The armchair was physically too heavy for Roland to even pick up. There was something else controlling him. Stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the exorcism of Roland Doe. After everything that was going on, the family knew that Roland was actually being controlled by something inside of his body. They knew it was demonic. When Roland would actually get sleep at night, he would talk in his sleep a lot. But it wasn't talking in his sleep like you would normally expect from a person. He was speaking full Latin. Roland didn't even know Latin. The Doe family decided to finally take him to a Lutheran minister. The minister thought it would be best for Roland and his mom to come spend the night at his house. At about 3 in the morning, Roland and his blankets were on the floor and going underneath the twin bed. Roland's body started to shake viciously up and down, hitting the springs under the bed. But Roland didn't even wake up. The minister told the Doe family that there was nothing he could do and they needed to go see a Catholic priest. Roland started to develop long, bloody scratch marks all over his body every single night. But the weird thing was, every single morning when he would wake up, the scratches would just be gone. Stay tuned for part 4. This is part 4 of the true scary story of the exorcism of Roland Doe. Roland would wake up in the middle of the night to long, bloody scratch marks all over his body. But the weird thing is, those scratch marks would just disappear the next morning like they never happened. The Doe family decided that they would finally meet with the Catholic priest. Right away, the priest said that he could see that Roland was possessed. Roland didn't even know Latin, and in perfect Latin, he said to the priest, "O priest of Christ, you know that I am the devil. Why do you keep bothering me?" After hearing this, the priest sent Roland to a Catholic hospital where he could be cared for by nuns. At the hospital, the priest attempted his first exorcism on Roland. Before starting, they tied Roland's hands and legs to the hospital bed. Then, the priest started the exorcism. Roland managed to get one of his hands free and loosened one of the metal bedside posts. He took the bedside post and stabbed it into the priest's arm. Stay tuned for part 5. This is part 5 of the true scary story of the exorcism of Roland Doe. If you listen to part 4, we know that the first exorcism on him did not work. The priest who attempted that exorcism decided that he never wanted to try again. That meant that the Doe family needed to find a new priest. But the bloody scratch marks on Roland would not stop. One night, the word Lewis formed on Roland's chest. They found a guy by the name of Raymond Bishop who was willing to help Roland. Raymond sprinkled holy water all over the bed where Roland was sleeping. When he did that, they watched with their own eyes scratch marks form all over Roland's body, but they didn't know what was causing it. Raymond described it as if something inside of Roland was trying to claw its way out. Raymond knew that this was out of his control, so he got his friend who was a Catholic priest to help him. Then they got ready to perform Roland's second exorcism. When they started the exorcism, the priest called upon every single holy god to help him face evil. But things started to go downhill real quickly. Stay tuned for part 6. This is part 6 of the exorcism of Roland Doe. Before the exorcism, the priest and Raymond Bishop called upon every single holy god to help them with the exorcism. But things started to go downhill real quickly. They got to the part of the exorcism where they talked to the demon directly. He shouted at Roland, "I command thee, unclean spirit." Roland started screaming in pain, and you could see the scratch marks appearing all over his body. Every single time the priest would say God or Lord, new bloody scratch marks would appear on Roland. The priest asked the demon its name and when it would leave Roland's body. When the priest said that, the word hell appeared on Roland's chest in blood. Then, the Roman numeral 10 appeared on Roland's leg. That rose a lot of questions. Did that mean he would leave in 10 hours, 10 days, 10 weeks, 10 years? The priest got to his last prayer of the exorcism. He said, "I cast you out." And then Roland was just still, but just for a moment. Stay tuned for part 7. This is part 7 of the exorcism of Roland Doe. They got to the last part of the exorcism and the priest yelled, "I cast you out," to the demon inside of Roland. And then Roland was just silent, but not for long. He broke that silence when Roland started to sing. He sang so loud and moved with the music like crazy. They knew that this was still the demon controlling Roland. The exorcism had failed. If you remember from before, the Roman numerals 10 appeared on Roland's leg in blood. They assumed that they would have to do the exorcism 10 times before the demon left. Every single day, they repeated the exorcism again and again and again. Every single day they repeated the exorcism, the demon inside Roland kept getting more and more violent. They got to the 10th day, performed the exorcism, and Roland went silent. There was no signs of the demon, and there was no signs of the demon that entire week. The demon was finally gone, or so they thought. Stay tuned for part 8. This is the last part of the exorcism of Roland Doe. They believed the exorcism had worked because there was no signs of the demon. But one day, Roland didn't feel good and told his family to come up to the room with him. His eyes snapped shut and he was in a trance. The demon spoke through Roland and said, "I will stay 10 days, but return in 4 days. If you stay and become a Catholic, I will stay away. If you do not believe me, then Roland will suffer forever." The priest believed that if Roland was baptized in a Catholic church, then the exorcism would work. On the way to the church, the demon spoke through Roland and said, "So, you are going to baptize me and you think that will drive me out with Holy Communion?" And then proceeded to drive the family off the road. It took 4 times to baptize Roland. Once they went on to his first communion, it took them 5 tries for him to swallow anything. Then, the Roman numerals 18 appeared on Roland's thigh. On the 18th night of the exorcism, they decided to perform it in a different way. Maybe this would help. At the end of the exorcism, Roland, in his own voice, said, "He's gone." he was free.
Proof that true love is real. Story time. This girl messaged me on Instagram and she was telling me about how her parents met. We're gonna call her Amanda. So Amanda's dad is from America, and somewhere in the 1990s he was working for NASA, but he quit his job and moved to Italy because he wanted to learn Italian. And Amanda's mom was from Guatemala, and she had just graduated from college, and her dream was to move to Florence and learn Italian. And I guess it was fate, but they ended up being in the same Italian class in Florence with 15 girls and one guy. And that is how they met each other, and it's really funny because there were 15 girls in the class and only one guy, and he was the only guy. All the girls in the class were obsessed with him except for Amanda's mom. She really just wanted to go to a soccer match and watch the game. In Guatemala, it's a known thing to not go to soccer matches alone because of safety reasons, but she didn't know that it was a lot safer in Italy. So she begged Amanda's dad to go with her to keep her safe, and they kind of both thought it was a date, but then they also were just like, we're just friends. I'm running out of time, but this story is so cute. Part 2 is coming right now. Part 2 of the story that shows that true love is real. So Amanda's parents go to the soccer match together, and they kind of think it's a date, but they also are like, nah, we're just friends. Long story short, they fell in love. They backpacked through Europe together for months until her mom had to go back home to Guatemala. So Amanda's dad asks her mom for her email address, but in Guatemala, back in that time, they didn't have internet, so she didn't have one. And then Amanda's dad didn't have a phone number because he didn't have a permanent house. Remember, guys, this was still the 20th century. So after all of that, they depart from each other, and he thinks that he will never see her again, and that was the love of his life. But when Amanda's mom's plane lands in Guatemala, she sees a sign that says Guatemala now has internet. So she goes home and immediately decides that she needs to find this man again. But the internet was new and it was really expensive, so she couldn't afford it. But her family owned a private school, so she convinces her dad, which is Amanda's grandfather, that they need internet because it will bring more students in. So he buys the internet because she convinced him that it was a really good investment, but she really just wanted to find the love of her life again. I'm running out of time, but this story is so cute. Part 3 is the last part, and it is coming right now. Part 3 of the story that proves that true love is real. So Guatemala now has internet, but Amanda can't afford it, so she convinces her dad, who owns a private school, to invest in internet because it will bring more students to the school. So he buys it, not knowing that she literally just wanted to use it to look up this guy. She finds the email of the cafe that Amanda's dad used to eat at all the time in Florence, and she emails it and says, hey, does blah 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 still eat there? And it turns out that he still went there from time to time, so he got her new email from the cafe, and they start talking again, and a few months later he travels to Guatemala to see her, and it was like they were never apart. And then a year later they get married and they have 3 kids, including Amanda herself. And then they got divorced. But they remain really good friends, and they both agree that they had beautiful kids and it was totally worth it. And even though they got divorced, I still believe it was true love. It was meant to be, it just was not meant to last. Oh, also, you know how her mom had her dad install the internet in their school? Well, that was actually the first high school in Guatemala that had internet and computer classes, so they actually started the new national trend of internet.